know what water tastes like? Think about that for a second. It's something so ordinary and routine that we take it for granted. I'm not talking about the water you swallow while swimming in the ocean or a nearby pool. I'm talking about what is supposedly the purest form available to us today, bottled drinking water. For me, bottled water has a very distinct taste. I can easily tell the difference between bottled water and tap water, and I can even sense the difference between brands, much like a wine connoisseur can distinguish between bottles of Chablis. I can also tell how long a bottle has been open. There's something about the taste, or the lack of it, that makes the flavor unforgettable. This isn't some strange superpower. It's just a quirk I've come to appreciate over the years, especially in more recent times. My friends and family don't know about this, and I've never even told my wife, and that's where my story begins. Last year, Lauren, my wife, started buying these little squirt bottles with flavor additives to put into water bottles. The flavoring was supposed to add a zing to plain water. Personally, I'm not a fan. To me, it tastes like someone spit out their chewing gum into the bottle and then shook it up. Anyway, she decided to test them out on me. I tried it and told her, I prefer my water pure. She didn't get the joke because, from time to time, she continues to sneak the flavored stuff into my bottles. This periodic tampering has been going on for a couple of months now. I try to be polite about it, but when she's not looking, I swap the water for the unflavored kind. And then at our annual summer barbecue for the whole neighborhood, something happened that I didn't expect. While I was busy working on 3 grills, focusing only on steaks and hamburgers, Lauren walked past me and handed me a bottle of water. When we host parties at our house, I don't like to drink alcohol, so I carry a water bottle with me all evening. Without thinking much, I took a sip and immediately realized it was one of her flavored ones. I didn't swallow it. Instead, I bent down to check the propane tanks and discreetly spit it out so no one would notice. I didn't spit it out because of the blackberry flavor, but because of something else I couldn't identify. There was a faint metallic taste along with a hint of something that reminded me of sulfur. I didn't know what it was, but I definitely wasn't going to swallow it. I left the bottle between the propane tanks and returned to cooking. But for some reason, a warning signal went off in my head. As casually as I could, I glanced around at the guests gathered in the backyard, smiling and continuing to serve food. Everyone was either deeply engrossed in conversations, stuffing their faces, or splashing around in the pool. Everyone except Lauren and Bob. They were sitting on a lounge chair, secretly watching me. I wonder why, I thought. They seemed to be having some serious conversation, occasionally glancing in my direction. And how did Bob get here? I don't remember inviting him. Bob is one of Lauren's colleagues who lives a few blocks away and has recently started showing up at events where we are. Until today, I had never really thought about him. The alarm bells in my head kept ringing. When all the steaks had been served and the hamburgers laid out on a platter on the picnic table, I turned off the burners and closed the lids. Lauren was watching me. I caught her gaze and motioned toward the kitchen door. I walked inside and grabbed another bottle of water from my personal stash. When I twisted off the cap, I noticed it had been opened before. Sniffing it, I detected the same metallic taste and hint of sulfur. Maybe it's just a bad batch, I thought. I set the bottle on the counter and abruptly turned toward my wife. "What's wrong, Chuck?" she asked with her sweet, slightly crooked smile. "Oh, nothing. Just restocking. I think we've got a bad batch of water. It has a funny aftertaste." "Oh, I don't understand how that could be. You probably just ate something that left an aftertaste. What did you do with the one I gave you?" Thinking quickly to avoid any trouble, I made up a little white lie. "Oh, I finished it. Just came in for another." She smiled and ran her fingers through my hair, all the while looking me straight in the eyes. "All right," she said, picking up the bottle I had just placed on the counter and handing it to me. "Take this one and go outside. Keep an eye on our guests. I'll tidy up a bit in here." As I walked along the path to the pool, Bob stood up and went inside. I noticed because that damn alarm in my head was screaming louder than ever, and every time I looked in his direction, it seemed to rise an octave. Something strange was definitely going on. But what? I moved through the crowd of friends and headed toward the side door that led to our bedroom. Once inside, I could hear voices coming from right behind the door, either in the hallway or the bathroom. It was Lauren and Bob. As quietly as I could, I tiptoed toward the door and listened. "I don't know," Bob said. The guy who gave it to me said it works differently for everyone. Some people feel the effects right away, and for others, it takes an hour or two. Be patient. Well, I'm too damn excited to wait, Lauren growled. I want your pants off right now. Damn it, Lauren, don't ruin a good moment. Once these partygoers leave, we'll have our own party. Be patient. This is what you wanted, to have sex with me until you lose your pulse while he sleeps in the bed next to us. I don't even know why, since he's been nothing but a good husband to you. Yeah, he's been a good little husband, but he's too vanilla, too predictable in bed. I want a little excitement, a little danger, without risking everything I've worked so hard for. And you, sir, represent that little bit of danger, and you're definitely not vanilla. Yeah, well, I don't want to do anything that might make me lose your body. And remind me never to cross you. You've got a nasty temper. Well, if you want me to be patient, you'll have to kiss me to hold off everything for later. Silence followed, and then a moan, one I had heard many times before, usually at night. The feeling in my stomach was unlike anything I had ever experienced. My insides were burning, and my heart was pounding harder and harder. The images in my head were like a poorly dubbed Asian film, as years flashed before my eyes. Every moment since I first saw Lauren at the far end of the room in our European literature class replayed in my mind. Every scene repeated the same dialogue. Lauren kept saying over and over, "I want your pants off right now." My head felt like it was about to explode. "Can you hold on until your husband falls asleep?" Bob whispered. "Mm-hmm. You bet, lover," Lauren whispered back. "Now get out of here before we get caught." I exited through the side door again, but I didn't return to the party. Instead, I walked to the front of the house, where everyone had parked. I needed to be alone and think about what I had just heard, so I sat down on the front steps and started reflecting on my life. For some unknown reason, I still had the water bottle with me that I had grabbed from the fridge just a few minutes before my life changed. When I realized what was happening and what had been in the water, I threw it into the yard. I sat there for a long time, and no one bothered me. Memories of the past blended with fear of the future as thought after thought raced through my mind, trying to make sense of recent events. I knew what was happening now, but I needed to understand what would come next. I had to put an end to the games being played at my expense and inflict as much damage as possible on the culprits. One of them was, for now but not for long, my wife. After that, I turned my attention to the water bottle I had thrown on the lawn. An idea began to form, then a smile appeared. It was time to get off my butt and do something. I grabbed the water bottle and headed back to the party. With all the composure I could muster, I found Lauren and said, "I need to run out and grab some beer. I'll be back in a few minutes." She placed her hand on my shoulder. "Do you think you're okay to drive?" I looked at her and said, "Yeah, I haven't had anything to drink except water. I'll be right back." I turned and left her standing there. As I was closing the garage door, I caught a glimpse of Bob walking up to her. In the garage, I poured out half of the water bottle, added a few extra ingredients, shook it well, and placed it in the cup holder of the center console. I had to stop by the pharmacy before going to the liquor store. I remembered that my grandmother always kept something in her medicine cabinet and used to threaten us kids with it, something called Ipecac syrup. I never dared cross my grandmother because I knew what Ipecac was for. Now it was perfect for my situation. When I got to the parking lot of the liquor store, I took a sip of water from the bottle and swished it around in my mouth. Without swallowing, I spat it onto the front seat. Then I grabbed my new purchase, walked to the trash bin next to the building, and drank half of the bottle. I tossed the rest into the dumpster. My stomach churned as I stumbled into the store on very unsteady legs. About halfway to the counter, Mount Vesuvius erupted. Everything I had eaten in the last 24 hours spewed onto their nice, clean floor. I collapsed into a ball, trembling like a leaf in the wind. The vomiting continued as the clerk tried to navigate around the puddles to check if I was still alive. He quickly gave up and called 911 when I started groaning. One of our town's best police officers arrived before the ambulance. I'm sure she thought she'd just find some drunk passed out in the liquor store. But when she saw me and the convulsions shaking my body, she changed her mind. Or at least I imagine she did, lying there. Sir, can you hear me?" she shouted into my ear. "Aha! Sir, what happened? Did you drink too much?" "No, just a bottle of water. My wife gave it to me. In the car, and then I vomited in her direction, but luckily she jumped out of the line of fire just in time. I saw the officer take the water bottle from my car while the paramedics loaded me into the ambulance and rushed me to the hospital. Once there, they ran all sorts of blood tests and pumped out what little was left in my stomach. I passed out after they shoved a tube down my throat and into my stomach. Sometime later, the same officer entered my room along with what I assumed was the doctor, and they woke me up. Huh? Where am I? Mr. Berry, I'm Officer Park, and this is Dr. Vodohovitz. Can you answer a few questions for us? Yeah, I think so. Although I'm feeling a bit dizzy. What happened? Sir, you passed out at ABC Liquors. Do you remember being there? Yes, I went to get some beer. How much have you had to drink today? Nothing. When we host barbecues at our house, I don't drink. I might have to drive some guests home later, so the only thing I've had is a couple of bottles of water that my wife gave me. That's it. Honestly. Are you sure? She asked. 100%. Yeah, and a couple of bites of a hamburger. All right, then I think we may have a problem. I'll let Dr. Vodohovitz explain the rest to you. The man in the white coat began to speak. Mr. Berry, the water bottle that the officer took from your car contained a mixture of a sedative called triazolam, strychnine-based rat poison, something you can buy at almost any hardware store, and digitalis purpurea, or the common plant known as foxglove. All three were in doses high enough to cause the seizure you experienced, and if you hadn't been brought here immediately, you likely would have died within a few minutes. We'll need to keep you here for a couple of days to ensure there are no neurological or organ issues related to ingesting such a combination of toxins. Right now, we'll give you IV fluids to flush out whatever is left. We'll know more in a few days, but for now, all you need to do is rest. Let the nurse know if you feel anything strange. I mean, anything at all. And Mr. Berry, I have to say, you're lucky. Thankfully, your body rejected the toxins. Otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. Honestly, you're lucky to be alive. In my opinion, the combination of these poisons couldn't have been an accident. Someone went out of their way to do this to you. The room grew eerily quiet. Officer Park excused herself and stepped into the hallway to answer a call on her cell phone. The doctor just patted my hand, smiled, and left. I turned away from the door and smiled too, but my smile turned into a frown when I thought about Lauren. When Officer Park returned, she looked concerned. Mr. Berry, I just spoke with another officer who went to your home to talk to your wife. When he told her what had happened to you, she ran into the backyard and started screaming and yelling at one of your guests, Mr. Robert Michaels. From what the officer told me, they were both accusing each other of spiking your drinking water. Things escalated into a physical fight between the two, so the officers had to restrain them. There was a lot of shouting, screaming, and more accusations that I can't discuss right now. But after they calmed down a bit, both were taken to the station. Your wife and Mr. Michaels will be questioned so we can figure out how they were involved in your situation. Depending on their statements, charges may be filed. The person who did this to you is in serious trouble. They'll be charged with attempted murder. Nothing is more serious than that. Right now, just follow the doctor's orders, rest, and don't worry about anything. I'll leave you my card, and if you have any questions or remember anything helpful, you can call me anytime. Oh, and the water here is safe to drink. At least, that's what I've been told. Good night, sir. I didn't have a good night, but I did feel better. Lauren and Bob were sentenced to 3 to 5 years in state prison for second-degree assault. I asked the district attorney to show leniency because I wasn't seeking revenge, just justice. They took a plea deal when it was offered. Otherwise, the state would have charged them with second-degree attempted murder. With good behavior, they'll probably be out in 2 years on parole. The guy who gave Bob the sedative got 1 year for distributing a controlled substance. He'll have to wear an ankle monitor for that year. Bob's wife filed for divorce after the sentencing. Everyone at the party heard Lauren and Bob screaming accusations at each other about who spiked my water and who seduced whom. News of their affair spread quickly. I'm divorced now, too. The only time I spoke with Lauren was 30 minutes after the sentencing. She apologized about 1,000 times. All I asked her was if this was what she meant by a little excitement, a little danger. I haven't seen her since. I haven't spoken to Bob either. I'm waiting for him to get out of prison before I have a real heart-to-heart with him, or better yet, with a baseball bat. Now, every time I drink water, there's an unpleasant aftertaste in my mouth.